I seriously freaking love the Resident Evil franchise. I feel like these games are such an interesting mix of goofy writing, incredibly messed up monsters, and actually genuinely good scares. I grew up playing and beating each of these games as they've come out, but I kind of wanted to talk about this today because about 4 years ago, I made a video called ranking every single Resident Evil. And the video kind of blew up. People really enjoyed it. Since then, though, I've gone back and replayed a bunch of those games. The original trilogy, Code Veronica, the Resident Evil remakes we've been getting, and I kind of wanted to talk about it today, to re-rank and actually talk about my total feelings on the Resident Evil franchise as they exist today. Are you ready? Let's get into this. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. So this is going to be a nice chill video. As this gets uploaded, I'm actually at a funeral for a friend of mine, so I kind of wanted to do something that's good vibes. And really nothing makes me happier than just talking about Resident Evil. So as you can see here, we have all of the American Resident Evils. There is technically a couple of extra games that only came out in Japan, but for the most part, they're actually pretty bad. Specifically stuff like the extra Gun Survivor games. They remade Resident Evil Code Veronica as a first-person shooter. It is clunky and terrible. So let's start off by talking about the original trilogy and try and go through this very unique game series. We're going to rank them from S all the way down to D. I kind of want to make an F category, but let's just consider even the worst stuff doesn't really deserve to go past a D because at least it's playable. Now, this is difficult to discuss, but where do you put the original Resident Evil, the game that came out back in the day and, in my opinion, actually invented current day survival horror, at least as we currently consider it? I like this game a lot. I've played it multiple times, but having recently gone through it on the PlayStation 5 with the PlayStation Collection, I'm going to give it a B. It's good. It's created a lot of good moments, but I just don't think it quite deserves to be in the A. Now, Resident Evil 2, oh man, I have to give that S+. The original Resident Evil 2 is completely freaking mind-blowing. I think it's aged incredibly well, and even though the dialogue is a bit dated and the graphics are certainly kind of clunky, the fact that it came with two separate discs and lets you play as two separate characters, the A scenario and the B scenario, my friends and I spent literally years playing Resident Evil 2, and even to this day, I can pick it up, play it, and it is such a freaking great time. And that's kind of how I feel about Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. This is a game that is definitely shorter, and obviously a tinier experience than Resident Evil 2. We only played as Jill Valentine in that game, but we did also get that nice Mercenaries mode. I'm still going to personally give that an S+. I think this game, people kind of hated on it when it initially came out back in the day, but I feel like people have sort of warmed up to it over the course of the decades. It does feel like Resident Evil 2 2.5. You know, it's not a completely next big jump, but it is definitely a unique and awesome dark chapter of Resident Evil. Now, a game that definitely keeps getting more and more hated over the course of these last few years especially is Resident Evil Code Veronica. Now, when I first played Code Veronica back on the Dreamcast, it completely blew my mind. It was the first time we had actually HD graphics for a Resident Evil game. I do think the monster design in general was fantastic, but I recently ran back through it, and I'm starting to notice some of the faults that people have complained about. It does have a ridiculous amount of backtracking. It does definitely have some issues with a goofy story with some questionable dialogue. I still can't hate it as much as most people. A lot of people I definitely think would probably want this to be down here in D. I'm still going to have to give it a B. I still think I really enjoy the fact that even though you do have to kind of go back and forth on the maps, I think the game is terrifying, and it is basically the real Resident Evil 3. It is the next continuation of the chapters of Wesker and the Stars people. Now, we're coming here into the 3DS games. There's a couple of them here that are very, very strange, and I feel like a lot of people don't even know they exist, which is Resident Evil Dead Silence. This actually came out on the Nintendo DS, and I think also, like, you could play it on the 3DS, obviously. It was a complete remake of Resident Evil 1, but for a handheld, and it's very strange, but it's kind of cool. You can knife the hell out of everybody by swiping the touchscreen. I kind of appreciate this a lot for its uniqueness. But where do I give it? I think I'm going to give this an A. I recently played a bunch of it again while modding my 3DS, and I really liked it. Now, Mercenaries 3D is pretty much just wave-based. It's just a game where you get to kill tons and tons and tons of zombies and ganados and stuff. I'm going to give this one a C, just because it is a tinier experience. Oh no. Okay, so we're to the first game I absolutely hate. There's only like 2 Resident Evil games that I think are legitimately bad. Like actually so terrible that if you bought them, you deserve a refund. The first one is Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. There seems to be this strange, very diehard group of people online who love this game. No hate to you guys. I'm glad y'all got more out of it. Maybe if I'd had a chance to play it co-op. Operation Raccoon City was a shooter that had you going through Raccoon City, obviously during the downfall of it. And to me, it just felt like a very, very unfinished, incomplete idea. The AI was bad, the graphics were good, the campaign didn't make any damn sense. And that's additionally how I feel about Resident Evil Umbrella Corps. This is basically Raccoon City 2. It's another chance to play as the special Umbrella Special Forces people and shoot a lot of zombies. I think both these games are, even if the team had the best intentions, they're absolutely terrible. You'll notice here there's actually a couple Resident Evil Online games that did not exist back when I made my original video talking about the series in 2019. We have Reverse, we have Resistance. We're going to talk about all that, but let's go back to talk about a game I definitely do enjoy a lot. Resident Evil Revelations. Now, this originally came out on the 3DS, just like these other games did, like Dead Silence. Where do I put it, though? They did do some good remakes of it and stuff as well. I'm going to give that a good solid A. Where is Resistance 2? Let's go ahead and do Resident Evil. Here we go. Revelations 2. Resident Evil Revelations 2. I have seen some people kind of hate on this because it's very focused on chapters. You play as different people. The game is very co-op centric, but it's like asymmetrical co-op. Like you'll have somebody using a flashlight and one person has the gun, and so one person has to like stun zombies while the other person gets headshots. It's an idea that I think some people hated on, but I still really enjoy it. I still think that as quirky as that game is, it feels very true to the Resident Evil terror. What do we do next? Let's actually knock out some of this original games here. Let's talk about Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6, which are often considered to be the last of the last gen Resident Evils. That definitely feels like there was this chapter of RE when they were still trying to figure themselves out. Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, and Resident Evil 6 were definitely a very specific era before everything gets reset with Resident Evil 7. So, recently, I played Resident Evil 4 5 times in a week, pretty much. And it was a very pleasurable experience. I mean, the original Resident Evil 4 has kind of gotten a bit clunky. The controls are not as smooth as they felt in 2005. But I can't help it. I love the goofy dialogue. Your right hand comes off. I love the fact that Resident Evil 4, while it's not nearly as scary as other Resident Evil games, it's still so obsessed with fun, and I really, really love that. I'm going to put that all the way up here at S. I kind of feel like I have to. Resident Evil 5, I've gone back and forth over the decades because I liked Resident Evil 5 when it first came out. I mean, to me, it was a 10 out of 10 game. I replayed it on my birthday, I think 2 years ago. I ended up doing a live stream of the entire game with fans, and it was very fun. I do think it's not quite the S tier I used to consider it. I am going to give it an A instead, simply because as fun as Resident Evil 5 is, it felt like when the universe's continuity began to degrade a bit. Now, Resident Evil 6, I used to consider a D-class game. I used to think this was absolute scum. It's way too long. It's not really spooky. It is very, very messy with multiple separate storylines and campaigns that don't really connect in the way that seems satisfying. But I do think I've been too harsh on it in the past. I'm going to give it a C because I do think that the fun chapters are actually pretty dang decent. It's just that it does get drugged down by its own filler at times. What's next? What do we do? You know what? Let's knock out some of these weird games. Resident Evil Survivor, which is called Resident Evil Gun Survivor in the rest of the world, is a first-person shooter that in America is very messed up. Originally, they wanted you to have a controller and a light gun, so you'd actually move and then shoot the zombies on screen. Then Columbine happened, and Capcom got a bit gun shy, literally. So they ended up giving us a very messed up version of it here in the US that just frankly does not work particularly well. I have a lot of problems with Gun Survivor. I think the game itself is like a cool idea. The biggest problem, the game is like 45 minutes long. That kind of sucks. The biggest issue, though, is that whenever you leave rooms, the zombies come back to life, which just feels like a massive oversight. Like, who wants to play a game that's constantly having monsters pop up again and again, killing stuff again and again with your limited ammunition? I'm going to give it a C. I still think it manages to contain a lot of that original Resident Evil spirit that I enjoy a lot as a fan, but it's difficult to say it's good. Now, let's talk about a game that people hate a lot, but recently did get an impressive remaster, which I reviewed and enjoyed quite a bit. Resident Evil 0. Now, when this game first came out back on the GameCube, the idea behind it was like fake co-op originally. You played as two separate characters, Billy, an escaped convict, and Rebecca Chambers, a young genius woman who is very good with like viruses and puzzles. They are on a train, and you basically do these puzzles all over the place where like you'll hand a key through a dumbwaiter. So you switch to the other character and solve a puzzle that unlocks a door for both of you. It's a very baton pass style of scares, but I do think the monster design is cool. I do enjoy the additions to the lore itself and what they did with Rebecca Chambers as a character. People hate Resident Evil 0. I see a lot of hate for Resident Evil 0. I'm going to give it a B, and if you guys are mad, well, you can stay mad. I think that game definitely gets bashed a lot. But if they ever remade Resident Evil 0 fully, I know that all of you would be lining up to play it just like I would. Resident Evil Gaiden on the Game Boy Color. I feel like I'm one of the 3 people in the world who actually beat this game, and man, did I beat the heck out of it. Resident Evil Gaiden is goofy, and it does have a strange combat system where there's like an aiming reticule that bounces back and forth, and you tap shoot in the center of the screen. I'm not going to try and defend it and act like it is a good idea or even a good game overall, but I kind of love the raw weirdness of it. A Game Boy, like, how were they going to put a big scary game onto a Game Boy, an original Game Boy Color? I am going to give it a C. It has some problems, but hell, I'm giving it a B. I got to give it a B. Okay, next up we have Resident Evil Outbreak and Resident Evil Outbreak File 2. These don't really work anymore in an official capacity. There is some fan servers and stuff that still are propped up, but these are online Resident Evil games that felt very much like the classic games. Tank controls, randomized puzzles, lots and lots of save one bullet terror. I kind of appreciate these, and I'm very lucky I did get a chance to play these when the servers were up. It was very cool. I'm going to give them both a B, though, because I do think that as cool as they are, they do feel minorly like a gimmick. There is some cool like story notes and stuff in there, but they didn't really felt like they added on to the mythos of Raccoon City. Now we're getting up to some of the modern stuff. Let's knock out some remakes here, shall we? So we've got all of the Resident Evil remakes right here, which is now a quadrilogy. A lot of people sort of forget the original Resident Evil remake, but let's start things off with Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. The piece de la resistance, the game that, in my opinion, and by the sales data, a lot of people agree, it's the game that breathed a lot of new life into Resident Evil. I have to give this an S. I've played through that game so many times, and I feel like I grow a deeper and deeper understanding and respect for this complete reinvention of a first-person shooter version of Resident Evil. I have to give Resident Evil Village an S as well. I love Village, and not just because it has a big titty goth freaking vampire lady. I legitimately think Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8 are going to be talked about and analyzed for years. Also, both of them have surprisingly good DLC. I wouldn't even know how the hell you would come up with an idea for horror-based DLC, but they actually did it. Let me talk about these actually. Let's actually dig into all 4 of the remakes, because these definitely feel like the things that people sort of debate and discuss the most, since obviously they're so current. So let's begin by taking a look at the original Resident Evil remake from 2005, back on the GameCube. This game, of course, has also been re-released again on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, but they also updated the controls. The original Resident Evil remake is actually surprisingly freaking terrifying. Lots of interesting new monsters like the Crimson Heads. There's a new creepy creature called Lisa Trevor. I'm very, very happy with what this game was, and I still think it actually stands the test of time better than a lot of these games from that same era. I'm going to give that an S tier for sure. Now, Resident Evil 2 Remake, this again is something that it actually inspired the original making of this ranking series. I have to give Resident Evil 2 Remake also a big ol' S+. I mean, the game is just so rock solid. I actually platinumed that on PlayStation 5. I did what? I think I did 7 playthroughs of Resident Evil 2 Remake, and all 7 of them have just been so freaking fun. I really enjoy all the challenges of those trophies, of beating the game with a minimal amount of steps, or trying to beat the game without actually healing or touching the item box. Now, Resident Evil 3 Remake is one I have talked about in depth, in that I do not hate the game, but I am definitely disappointed by it. Resident Evil 3 Remake feels rushed. It definitely feels like add-on content to the perfection of the Resident Evil 2 Remake, which had that time and that polish. There was a big wait for the Resident Evil 2 Remake, and when it came out, it definitely felt like that proper build-up, that proper payoff. Resident Evil 3 Remake, though, it definitely did feel like a big step down. I'm gonna give it a C, because as good as the controls were, as good as the combat is, I still just think that, man, the lack of a clock tower, the lack of the extra forms of Nemesis, it's definitely wasted potential. Now, just this week, actually shortly before recording this video, I have now platinumed the Resident Evil 4 Remake. I'm giving it an S tier. I have now done 10 full playthroughs of the Resident Evil 4 Remake, and I wish I could do another 10, but I have other games to review. That game is scarier than the original, has better combat, it remixes every single puzzle, every single boss, every single tiny element, and even rewrites the characters to actually have a different vibe. The Resident Evil 4 Remake, I actually believe, is probably the greatest Resident Evil of all time. If you're somebody that just starts the series today, the fact that you can play through the 2 Remake, the 3 Remake, and now the 4 Remake consecutively, these people are going to grow up, like new fans of this are going to experience the true renaissance of horror in a way that I wish I could have. I'm almost jealous of what they get to do that I didn't. All right, now we're going to talk about 2 games that I definitely wish I could love. These were both modern, very strange online projects. Resident Evil Resistance and Resident Evil Reverse. Both of these I've put a considerable amount of time in, and both of them I do not like. Resident Evil Resistance was a game where one person plays as a mastermind and basically builds a Resident Evil map for the other players to explore, and then you have to beat it. Now, they do stuff like spawn zombies, place keys, stuff like that. The weirdness is it just felt like the mastermind either completely crushed the enemy team in seconds or got flattened by a team that actually knew how to play the game. I am going to give this a D. I just think it is completely wasted potential of an online idea. Now this one, Resident Evil Reverse, is also, in my opinion, a giant L. Reverse is a shooter where all the characters from Resident Evil are fighting each other. For some godforsaken reason, it truly makes no sense to me, but it is what it is. Okay, I'm going to give that. Yeah, I just don't like Reverse. I think Reverse is a very weird game. They put in a bunch of skins and microtransactions as well. All right, Resident Evil Dead Aim. It's basically like a sequel to Resident Evil Survivor, and it's about as good. Again, very short game, first-person shooter. When they were first tinkering with the idea of that back on the PlayStation 2, it just doesn't really work. I can't bag on it too hard because it doesn't feel like a cash grab. It feels like an experiment that just kind of failed. It is still kind of goofy. It still has that original quirky conversation type and stuff from old school Resident Evil that I definitely enjoyed. Now, these last two you kind of have to rank together. These are both on-rails shooters from the Resident Evil universe, which is Umbrella Chronicles and Darkside Chronicles. I've played both of these, again, a lot, especially Umbrella Chronicles back on the Nintendo Wii. I really kind of like these. Maybe I shouldn't because they are just such weird little, silly, goofy little things that don't really matter. They're so inconsequential. But I kind of had so much fun with them. Me and my friends used to just play it till like 3 a.m. sometimes in our dingy little apartment. I mean, both of these games, I have such fond memories. They may not be a B to you, but I just have so much nostalgia built up for it that I can't help but give them those big bumps into the B. Well, these have just been some off-the-cuff thoughts. I'll make you guys a deal. If this video gets 3,000 likes, I'll do another ranking video of some variety. I'm going to dig through the comment section, and you guys can tell me what you enjoy the most. The games, the series, the consoles, the controllers, whatever you want me to rank. I'll read the suggestions, and I'll do another one of these probably in the future. I love you guys very much. This has been a rough week from losing my friends, so if you guys just do me a favor, pet your cat, pet your dog, hug a loved one in honor of life. Much love, and keep dreaming. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.